India is 80% Hindu, and Hindus are polytheistic rather than monotheistic, more by and large. We have 330 million gods in India, and no god in our society can afford to feel jealous. Whereas in the Judeo-Christian tradition, the monotheistic religions, the god is a jealous god and will not tolerate competition. And so this makes Hinduism quite different and makes the Indian temper quite different, because if my favorite god of my wife is different from my favorite god, well, we learn to coexist. And I follow her gods also, and she follows my gods. And then, of course, it goes to the point where my grandmother used to go to a gurdwara once a week. She'd go to a temple, different days of the week. And she would even go to listen to Muslim peers in those days, when she could. And so she was very plural in her behavior, very tolerant, because everybody, in fact, when the Dalai Lama came, she thought he was a god, and she went to meet the god of the Buddhist, although he is not a god, because Buddhism is an atheistic religion. The point here is that in India, with this pluralism, this fluorescence of gods, it makes us just a little more relaxed about each other and about the different people who come. In fact, Hindus, when the Muslims came, they offered the Muslims that we will make Allah one of the 330 million. In fact, we'll make him one of the big ones, like Vishnu and Shiva. We'll make him like a big god. And the Muslims, of course, didn't like it. Nor did the Christians like the idea when the Hindus offered to make them, to make Jesus Christ a major prophet, and to make the Christian God one of the big gods. Anyway, what is ironical is that in this society, which is also quite skeptical, and I'll come to that, in this society we have this ethic of Hindutva, which is a political form of Hinduism that has emerged and is certainly grabbing votes in elections and maybe the minds and hearts of people as well. This creed is not as tolerant. It is anti-Muslim, although they say they are not. It is anti-other minorities, although they say they are not. But it is a creed. There is an intolerance in that political form of Hinduism that is now winning elections. And I believe that this idea is its shelf life is not very long. And the reason is it goes against the fundamental temper of our country. The fundamental temper of our country is what I call the Nasadiya temper. The Nasadiya is a verse in the Rig Veda, in the 10th book of the Rig Veda, in which the poets are asking the question, how is the universe created? How is the cosmos created? And one of them, they say, there was darkness, there was no being. So how was there being suddenly in this universe? And they come to the conclusion, they say, well, maybe we should ask the gods. But no, gods came afterwards. Maybe we should ask the Brahmins. But then they say, no, the Brahmins always disagree with each other, so that's not a good answer. And so their conclusion is, maybe we don't know. We don't know. Now here, in the first book of the first Vedic book, the most sacred Vedic book, the answer is we don't know. And that sort of skepticism pervades a major strand of thinking in our society. And it also explains why we are able to have different gods for different purposes, and nobody gets particularly worried about whether I am worshipping one god or another god. And so I feel we should go back to our roots when we think about Hinduism. That the secularism in India is not like the secularism of the West, which is a separation of state and religion. That too, we have that idea, but what is basic idea in India is it's a faith-filled society, and what secularism means is equal respect to all religions. The problem with secularism in India, of course, is the fact that for many of the most vocal secularists were Marxists, and they were hard to hide their own belief, their own contempt for religion of all kinds. Marx taught them that religion is an opiate of the masses, that it is in fact, as one Marxist said to me, a tricycle, that you should be able to ride bicycles when you grow up. You don't need a tricycle. God was at the third wheel. Why do you need God? And so this idea, which was propounded by Marx through Freud and other modernist thinkers, this idea is what the secularists in India, and therefore their ideas could never resonate. Therefore also Nehru, who was a liberal and one of the great institution builders, our modern institutions, apart from socialism, which was a mistake, but other institutions, he's really the one who we can almost consider as the father who embedded these institutions. The reality is he could never reach the people because his atheism came through. Whereas Gandhi was far more successful. Gandhi preached the same ideas as Nehru, the ideas of liberty, equality. These are ideas of the Enlightenment, 18th century Enlightenment, on which our constitution is based. Gandhi, even before independence, during the freedom struggle, talked about freedom from foreign rule, which meant liberty. But he talked, and similarly equality, as the equality between a Harijan and a normal and an upper caste person. He used the language of dharma, of sadharan dharma, which is a kind of universal dharma, not a caste dharma, not swadharma, but sadharan dharma. And he was far more successful in reaching the people. And our problem today, actually, our problem with the rule of law, our problem with secularism, goes back to the fact that one of the tragedies has been that Gandhi died right after independence. And if he had lived, he would have been a lot more successful in selling the constitution as a Dharmashastra, as a moral idea. And he would have, India today would have been a lot more successful. And he would have, people now believe, a lot of people believe, that the constitution kind of fell from the heaven one day. It's not our constitution. It kind of came out. And because the people who ultimately, these were Western, they think of it as a kind of Western import. Now it is a Western import. The ideals, of course, came at one time, and the American Constitution is the first constitution, first modern constitution in the world. And it's the sort of the gold standard for all the constitutions that came afterwards, the inspiration. And the ideas of Locke and Mill, etc., came together at the time. But actually the ideas of the Constitution of liberty, equality, these are ideas which are universal. They have been there every time, in all history. They are nothing new. They did not come from the West. And this is the, I mean, you have to remember that even the West was at one time pre-modern. That these ideals were not there in the same way as we think of them now. The Western societies were monarchies, etc., and not the kind of liberal societies that they are today. So, my point here is very simple, that my point is that we need to sell our constitution to our people. And that is the primary role of leadership. And that has not been exercised. I thought J.P. Narayan might do it, Jayaprakash Narayan. He came close. But, and we have to sell the ideas to the hearts and minds. So we need another Gandhi in that respect.